Okay, we've got part 3 here, and hopefully the final part of how to straighten the front forks on a motorcycle after a crash or a spill or whatever. Okay, in the last video I was just at the tail end of describing you should make sure your back wheel is aligned and straightened before anything else. So yeah, again, measure from center to center, from the swing arm pivot back to the center of the axle. So the middle of the swing arm pivot shaft is right here. I've got a bolt here mocked up just to portray that. And what I want to do is grab my tape here. And I want to measure, just in a nutshell, from center of that pivot bolt to the center of the axle. Okay, and like I said, on this bike, both sides are equal, so this rear wheel is straight. And I've verified that using the method I just showed you, and I verified that with the increments here. Now, you can, if you're in a hurry, you can usually just on a newer bike, these are pretty accurate, so you can just use those. Okay, so we verified that the back wheel is perfectly straight. Now, the front end. You want to, basically, to do this, okay, your bike's on the pavement here. Your rear wheel can be propped up on the spool stand, or it can be on the pavement. Just make sure, when we do this, we want to make sure that these bolts here stay tight on your top triple tree. These bolts stay tight, okay? They don't come off, they don't loosen off. These are the only two bolts that keep your forks where they are, up and down ways, so up and down. Yeah, if you were to loosen those off, your forks could slide up or down. And then you'd have to do a whole bunch more stuff to realign. You'd have to set all those up. Okay, some tools that we need here, you're going to need. Going to be various sockets, you know, for your axle, sockets for your steering stem nut. Sometimes you need Torx. You're going to need some extensions I've got here, Allen key sockets, and like to do the back wheel, to get your center line, to get your center point on your swing arm pivot shaft. Sometimes drill bits work, so you might need a selection of drill bits. I have those there. What else? That's about it for that. You're going to need a torque wrench, breaker bar, ratchet, wrenches, and Allen keys. So you can probably get away with doing this with a lot less, like if you're on the road. Allen keys are a big thing though. If you have those, you should be able to get most of it done. So what you're going to want to do to align your front forks, let's say your handlebars, your forks are bent, okay? Just pretend. I've done it already on this bike. I'm just mocking it all up again on video so I can show you guys, so I can demonstrate the procedure of how to align it. Alright, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to loosen. I've already done it here, but there's a bolt, a locating bolt that goes in your handlebar clamp side here that bolts it to the triple tree. Some bikes have it, some don't, but if you do, you're going to want to loosen that off and take it right out. What I did, see, your handlebar clamp should be actually, on this bike anyway, should be all the way up touching the triple tree, but we want to loosen it off. We want it to be separate from this, because we want everything south of this top plate here, we want everything south of this to be able to move freely with the fork tube. So what I did was I've taken off my locating bolts completely here, took them off completely, and I've loosened my clamp bolt, and I've moved my handlebar down about 1/2 inch, about 3/8, tightened it back up, just snugged it up just for now. You want to snug it up just so that you have something to hold on to when you need to move the bike around, or move the bars around, move the forks around. That's it. Same with the other side. I've taken it off, moved it, so do that with the other side too. Move the other handlebar down and move it out of the way, get it separated from your top plate here. Okay, and you might have to take off some body work to get at, you want to be able to expose your lower triple tree fork clamps, these fork clamp bolts. You want to be able to get at them. So I had to take off this inner plastic here on both sides. Good idea is to wash this after you've done so. I did mine with water, but you can probably get away with using maybe some brake clean here and some compressed air. If you have it available, compressed air is very helpful in this situation. You want to clean off the forks around the clamping areas, just to remove any debris, any dust. You don't want that interfering when you're moving the forks around. You don't want anything to get lodged in there, or anything to scratch or indent it in any way or damage your forks, or to keep it from aligning itself properly. So you want to expose your lower triple clamp bolts here, and you want to undo them alternately. So crack that one about a 1/4 turn, crack that one a 1/4 turn, crack that one, undo that one a 1/2 turn, 1/2 turn, 1/2 turn, 1/2 turn, all the way until you got it loose. It should be hand loose. You should be able to see, like me, I can move mine by hand until they're both movable by hand, and then just turn them in until they seat, just with your fingers. Just turn them in until they seat. That way they're completely loose. Okay, same with the other side. Do it alternately. Crack that one a 1/4 turn, 1/4 turn, 1/2 turn, 1/2 turn, 1/2 turn, 1/2 turn, all the way until they're hand finger loose. You can just turn them out if you want, and then just seat them in. Just turn them back until they seat. So you got those lower triple clamp bolts loose. The next thing that you want to do is you want to, anything that's holding your fork tubes together, whether it be upper or lower. So this fender, for instance, you want it loose, because you don't have to take it right off, but you want it to all be able to wiggle when these forks are being reset, because you want it to wiggle, because you don't want this completely fixed in place, or else it won't be free to reset itself. So you want to loosen this, and I've backed mine out quite a bit. I backed mine out almost all the way. Keep them in a couple threads so they stay in and don't fall out. Okay, and the next thing you want to do, now this procedure, I have to try to get this done quick because we're running short on time here. This next procedure is a little bit confusing for some, but all you're really trying to do is you want to, eventually these have to be loosened too, but what you need to do is you have to make sure that this front axle is able to turn in this clamp here, in the front axle clamp. as long as it's able to turn freely, you know that it's going to be okay when we do the alignment procedure. Okay? So for that to happen, we actually have to loosen the clamp, or we have to actually loosen the axle nut here. So the procedure for that is, you're going to keep these tight for now, because those are going to hold this from moving for now, because we want it to be tight while we loosen off the nut on this side. So before you loosen off this nut, loosen these off alternately. I like to go outside first, then inside. So crack that, go a quarter turn, crack that a quarter turn, half turn, half turn, half turn, half turn, all the way until these are loose by hand. Now, like I said, I've already done this, so I'll just go over it with you quickly, just so you know what's going on. You're gonna need your sockets for this one. Okay, so you've got your axle nut socket there, and you're going to use like a breaker bar. Just put a breaker bar onto the end of that and crack it loose. All you're looking to do is loosen it. So crack it loose, turn it, I don't know, quarter turn, half turn, just until it's loose, right? Now, you can go ahead, and once that's done, you can loosen off your right side axle holder clamp bolts alternately. So crack that a quarter turn, crack that a quarter turn, half turn, half turn, half turn, half turn, until they're completely loose by hand. And now you can take your axle socket. Again, luckily on this bike, see, they're both the same size, but I've got two of them, and I'll show you why next. So you can use your axle socket and a breaker bar or whatever you have, a ratchet, just connect to that and just turn it, just to make sure that the axle turns inside this housing, and it should turn fairly easily. If it doesn't, you've got some sort of rusting or electrolysis or some sort of debris or maybe a burr in there holding it up, but it should turn really easily in there once you've loosened off your axle nut. Okay, now that we've verified that that turns, we can go ahead and we can tighten that up again. Another thing I want you to do before we do any of the main procedure here is on the right side, if you've got two brakes, if you've got two brake calipers on either side, you're gonna have to loosen off the right side caliper. And these are radial mounted too, so that's another reason why. So crack that loose, crack that loose. You want to loosen off the caliper. It's already been done on this bike, so the right side caliper is loose. Okay, so loosen that off. Okay, now back to the front axle. So that, because you want the right side loose. The left side doesn't change, so we don't have to do the left. And I'll show you why it doesn't change. It doesn't change because now you're going to tighten up the front axle here, but you can't use the axle clamp bolts to tighten it up this time, because we want this to still be able to turn freely in here. We're not done aligning it yet. If we tighten this up now, it'll kind of throw it out of whack, and then you won't know if it's gonna be hanging up or whatever, right? So this is the tricky part. You've got one axle socket in there, I had to grab another one because they are both the exact same size. So what you're gonna have to do, you torque this now to your manufacturer's spec. You get your owner's manual, your factory service manual for your motorcycle, so you can get the specs for the front axle torque, front axle nut torque, and it's usually between 65, I've seen them as low as 65, but it's usually 65 to 100 foot-pounds. So what you want to do is you want to set your torque wrench up, put your torque wrench onto the end of your nut socket, and then you want to get a buddy. With this is kind of something I've kind of mocked up here. I just had a buddy put a pair of vice grips onto here, or you can weld, you can make a tool, but I just put a set of vice grips on there and got a buddy to hold it. So that's what you're going to do. Instead of using the clamp bolts, the clamp to hold it, you're going to hold this side with a socket while you tighten the axle. So tighten it to torque specs, so now it's 100% tight. Your axle is 100% tight, and now it is 100% perpendicular to this bottom lug here. Okay, now you are going to, once that has been torqued, now you can go ahead and or actually I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say that it's 100% perpendicular. Not until you tighten your left side axle clamp bolts. So you're going to want to tighten these and torque them to spec. I usually start with the inside first. These are 15 foot-pounds, so in inch-pounds that's 180. So I usually set it to 130. What I usually do is I'll cinch them up first. I'll cinch that up, and then I'll set it to 130, turn it till it clicks, and then turn this till it clicks, set it to 150, turn it till it clicks, turn it till it clicks, set it to 180. Now the final, so you want to do it in like 3 stages. You torque it in 3 stages, alternating. 180, turn it till it clicks, turn it till it clicks, and then turn it till it clicks, turn it till it clicks. And you do that until the torque wrench just clicks. Alright, so now the left side is completely set to this lug. So that's what we want. That's our starting point. Everything else is loose, right? Everything else is loose. Now what we want to do, now we can start the alignment process. There's a couple simple procedures that you'll do just to align it. One thing you want to do, get a buddy to hold the back of your bike, to hold your bike so that it doesn't you know, move or jump off its spool stand. And all you're going to do is you're going to take both hands. I use both, but I'm holding the camera with one. But you take both hands, grab your front wheel, and give it a shake back and forth. Give it a shake. Do it a little bit more aggressive, a couple inches back and forth here. Give it a shake for a few minutes. I've already done it on this bike. I'm going to go ahead and once you've done that, once you've just shooken it up from side to side a little bit, that just kind of gets everything loose and out of place, out of its twisted position, and it'll help get it in a general straight position. And once you've got a buddy holding the back, you can do that a little bit more vigorously than I did. Now the next step is to get on the bike, and I'll just show you from my perspective here. The bike is on the spool stand. It's straight up and down. Now it doesn't have to be on the spool stand if you don't have it, or if you're on the road somewhere. You can just have the back wheel on the ground, but try to get somebody to help you. You kind of want this step to be done. You kind of want the bike to be straight up and down. So get on the bike. Okay, So mind you, everything's still loose here, but we've tightened the handlebars up on either side so that they're not in the correct position yet, but they're tight enough just for our purposes right now. Even though those are tight though, I'm just gonna grab the triple tree here. Take your key out so you don't bend your key or anything. Now you're just gonna grab the triple tree here, and you're gonna push down a few times, like 4 or 5 times. Push down on the forks, down and up, 4 or 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. Use both hands though. I'm just using one just because I'm holding the camera. But go up and down vigorously 4 times, 4 or 5 times, or however many you want. You can do it even 10 times if you want. And once you've done that, you go down and up, down and up. So that will straighten your forks out, believe it or not. The telescoping motion of your forks going down, the mechanics of the inner tube sliding through the bushings, and the spring sliding through the shims, they will straighten everything in its machined position in these yokes. These yokes are machined from the factory always to be straight. So that motion is what's straightened your front end. So if you do that a few times and look, so your front wheel should be straight to the forks. Now it's going to be really hard to tell on camera here, but when you're on the road or you're in the shop or you're on your workshop pad here, you're going to be able to tell if it's you know, if you look down, if you sight it, it's going to look it's going to look straight, and it'll be straight. Now if you can see that it's still out, you need to continue the process. So you need to continue your up and down motion. What you can also do is you can also try and grasping the front wheel again and pulling it to the correct side, because it might still be hung up. It might still be, friction might still be holding something in place. So, and also double check that you've loosened everything off. Okay, so then after that process is done, your front wheel is aligned. Okay, so we've gone ahead and that's done. Your front end is aligned, your back end is aligned. I've explained that. Now we just have to tighten everything up. So proper procedure for that. Your fender will be like the last thing you do. Oh, actually, I forgot to mention one thing. This was just take note of this, okay? So before we did all those, before we did the wheel shaking and the pushing the forks up and down, this is a big thing I forgot. But good thing I remembered now, because you can just take this video and switch my procedure. I forgot to tell you, you got to take this. Loosen this. Just take a breaker bar and loosen that until it's just hand loose. So you want to loosen your center stem nut. This one needs you need a big socket. This one is 1 3/8. Yeah, 1 3/8. It's a big guy. It's probably about 34 mils. So yeah, loosen that off, because this has to be loose for this to turn independently of the bottom. So this has to turn independently of the bottom for everything to straighten itself. So that's what you want to do. That's a boo-boo by me. But yeah, just make sure that's loose before we grasp the front wheel. So as long as we loosen that, now we can go around to the front. We'll wrap this up right away here. I kind of have to work around another bike. Okay, so that center stem is loose. Now we grab this and we give that a shake. Do that procedure again with a buddy holding your bike. Okay, and now jump on the bike and push your forks up and down vigorously. You know, at least 4 to 5 times, and then we're straight. So my bad. So now we had everything loose, except for, like I said, except for your front axle should be torqued when that procedure is done. And don't forget to loosen off your center stem. It's just friction that's holding. Technically this should be able to move independently, but it's just friction holding this nut, holding this stationary. So you want to loosen that off. This is usually, I've seen them the same as a front axle, 60 to 100 foot-pounds. Mine is oddly enough only like 60 foot-pounds on this bike. So, okay, so we've done the motions, the telescoping fork motions, and we've, so that should be your last motion, is moving the forks up and down is your last motion. That's what sets everything in place. That's what aligns the forks perfectly parallel to each other in their machined yokes. Okay, so now right after you do right after you push down on the forks and get that done, okay, and keep everything where it is, don't jar anything. Now you want to tighten stuff up. You want to tighten everything up in place. So do those motions up and down. Make sure the bike stays where it is. If it's sitting straight up and down, get your buddy to hold it for a sec. Bring your socket around here. What you want to do, you want to cinch up these guys. So cinch those up. Doesn't really matter, just get them done. I usually like to start with the inside, then outside. Okay, cinch those up so that it won't move. Okay, and now quickly go ahead and cinch up your lower fork tree pinch bolts, alternating. Just cinch them up for now so they don't move. Go to the other side, cinch it up so it doesn't move. Okay, and once you've done that, boom, now everything is locked in place. Now go ahead and torque these in 3 stages, just like you did the last one, up to 180 inch-pounds, or whatever your manufacturer's manual, your factory service manual suggests. It's usually around 15 foot-pounds. So alternating from, I like to go inside to outside, so I go, so that's 180 inch-pounds, so I usually go 130 till it clicks, 130 till it clicks, 150 till it clicks, 150 till it clicks, 180 till it clicks, 180 till it clicks, and that's done. Okay, and actually the same thing for these, but on this bike here, where's my camera? This bike here, these are 18 foot-pounds, so that's like 210, I think, inch-pounds if you have an inch-pound torque wrench. Same thing, alternating your torque. So, you know, go like 140 inch-pounds, 140 inch-pounds, 170, 170, 200, 200, and 215, 215, whatever you want to do. 3 or 4 stages. It never hurts to be a little bit more precise on those. Do it to the other side and cinch those up, and then the next thing we're going to do, so now we've got the forks are all aligned and tight to torque specs. Okay, the last thing that you're going to want to do is to put your handlebars back into place. Okay, now the front wheel is totally fastened. Now you want to torque your caliper back into place. Check your factory service manual. You might have to add a locking agent. Anytime you loosen off your caliper bolts, you might have to just take them right out and add a locking agent. Check your factory service manual for that. Okay. Now, the next step is you're going to want to torque your center nut, your steering stem nut here to spec. Okay, so your factory service manual probably will say somewhere between 60 and 100. Torque that to spec, and then you can go ahead, after you've done that, you can go ahead and loosen your handlebar clamp bolts right there. Go ahead and loosen those off, bring them all the way up to here. Put your locating bolt back in and torque all those to spec and tighten all those up using a locking agent. Like Loctite is a good one. Blue Loctite I usually use because you don't want any of those falling out. One thing I do is I actually I'll keep the locating bolts out, because in case you ever drop it, you don't really want those bolts breaking off in there, because it is a pain in the butt. Winston, come here. Let's call my dog back here. Okay, yeah, so you don't want those breaking off, because if they break off, those locating bolts are right into this top clamp here, and that means you either have to keep them out all the time, because there's because they'll break. The backing, the holes underneath here will actually break, the threaded holes under here, and there won't be anything for the bolt to grab onto. So it's kind of a pain to weld onto this cast aluminum. So you're pretty much going to be, and to do it right, you're going to just get a new one, you know. It's going to be messy if you try to fix it, and it's just there's a lot of time. So try to keep, I would keep those out, and just use the ridge under here to set them in place, and that's all I would do. And then just use the clamps to spec. Okay, so now your handlebars are on. Make sure your fender is back into place. You might want to pull out your fender fastening bolts and put blue Loctite on them. They won't fall out then. And that's the same for most body panel bolts and fasteners. You want to make sure that there's some sort of locking agent on them, because most likely they will fall out. Alright, so that concludes our alignment. I don't think I've missed anything. Oh, see, on this bike here, and that's another thing too, is just always look over the bike after. This bike here, I need to put a cotter pin in the back axle. Always, because we've checked the alignment here to see if it's straight, and it is. So the next step here is to this hasn't been run yet on the road, so the next step is to, before it goes out, I want to make sure cotter pin's in there. Okay, so that's torque. Yeah, that concludes our video. Your motorcycle, street or dirt, is now straight. Minor variations between street bikes, there could be slight differences. If anyone has any questions, you can reach me, and I would be glad to do a service on a different bike, just to demonstrate the differences in the proper way. Okay, thank you very much. Stay tuned for the next video, which is going to be setting the race sag on your motocross bike. All right, thank you.